right, good evening. We're starting right on time. Paul's happy about that. I'm Justin Krieger. I'm one of the partners at Client First. I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm also head of financial planning at Client First. So I'm up here introducing Rob tonight. I just realized as I was driving in, no trivia today. But it is the warmest winter on record. No doubt. I heard that on the radio the other day. So we crushed it by over a degree. So that's our trivia, not trivia tonight. So Rob Mielek, if you're a current client at Client First, you know Rob. He works very closely with basically all of our clients. And just want to point out a couple things. So we've got, if you've been to our office, you know we have our core values on the wall. And Rob definitely lives out in his work and actions. Core value number one, we love our clients and we're totally committed to their financial well-being. Rob is always answering his phone, answering clients' questions and working through whatever estate planning and other legal questions, issues that they have. And then also core value number 5, we are a family of families and we believe of life outside the office. Rob's working on this one. Rob's normally when his wife and 2 boys go on vacation, Rob just stays working. But I'm going to introduce Rob here, and he's going to talk about his family a little bit and his upcoming vacation before he gets started.
Thank you, Justin. First of all, can everybody hear me in the back? Excellent. So here's the thing. I'll save the trivia wagon here, okay? I'll give you a trivia question. Not as good as the weather trivia, but I'll see what I can do. Poll of 1,000 adult Americans. What is their greatest fear? Death. I heard death. Anything else? Your wife is right. Public speaking. Death is number 2. Public speaking is the number 1 fear, and death is number 2. We know what that means logically, right? If there is a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. That's where I'll start. It only goes up from there, I promise. All right, so by way of introduction, thank you for the introduction there, Justin. My name is Rob Mielek. I'm an estate planning attorney. I run my own law firm that is devoted exclusively to estate planning. I've been practicing law for almost 17 years. I've had my own law firm for about 8. For those of you who don't know me, I have a good alliance with Client First. If you're a Client First client, I will review documents on a complimentary basis. So if you have existing estate planning documents, you have some questions, thoughts about reviewing the documents, just drop them off, set up a meeting with me. I will do that on a free basis, okay? If you do not have existing estate planning documents, I offer free initial consultations to talk you through what an estate plan ought to have. One of the things that I think about when it comes to estate planning is making sure that people know what an estate plan can do for them. Because there's a big misconception between what an estate plan can do and what people think it can do. The best way I can demonstrate that is this point. And anybody who's heard me speak before has heard me say this. Because literally every time I do a public speaking engagement, that's about 30 to 40 a year, I mention this point. Every single person over the age of 18 should have an estate plan. I'm going to repeat that. Every single person over the age of 18 should have an estate plan. Why is that? Because the moment somebody turns 18, we lose the ability as parents to be able to make financial and medical decisions for them. And the only way we can do that is if we have an estate plan in place. Talk about family. I have 2 boys who are 14 and 11. They both play a lot of sports. If something happens to them during one of the sports, when they're under 18, absolutely my wife and I can make those decisions. But the moment they turn 18, even if they are still in their senior year of high school, we lose that ability. So many people in this room may have children children right around the age of 18. Maybe some of you have grandchildren around the age of 18, and their parents ought to know that that's what an estate plan can do. Justin had mentioned family and travel. I don't like flying. I haven't flown in 7 years, so we'll see how that goes. But I am going for the first time leaving the country. I've never left the country before, so I'm going on a cruise in March to Honduras and to Mexico. So as Justin correctly pointed out, my wife and kids have been to Costa Rica, Hawaii, everywhere else while I'll stay here. But the boys and my wife finally convinced me to go, so we'll see how that goes. So that's why I normally do the March Lunch and Learn, but that's why this month Client First is gracious enough to let me switch months, and that's why I'm presenting to you here in February. So for those of you who have attended Lunch and Learns here, like I said, I do 2 a year for Client First. I talk about estate planning. I talk about the nuts and bolts of an estate plan, certain things to look for in an estate plan. I try to package it differently depending on the setup. For those of you who attended the last one I did, in August we did estate planning bingo. Just different ways to try to get some information out. This presentation is going to be a little different. I'm going to focus on what I call the affiliated groups with estate planning. Let's start with Client First. Client First obviously offers a wide array of services. They offer tax planning, Social Security optimization, insurance, taxes, things like that. Those are all things that tie into a well-drafted, well-created retirement plan, as does estate planning. And that's why we all kind of work as a team to make sure that all aspects of your retirement are considered and are accounted for. But there's a couple other areas outside of what Client First can offer that I want to make sure that we're aware of tonight. And in addition, the guest speaker here tonight, in addition to me, will be talking more about some senior living solutions. Anytime I do a public speaking engagement, I start with a modified version of this slide. And I always want to emphasize that first point, that 90% of American adults do not have an estate plan. Okay? Now, that number shifts dramatically if we look at, let's say, the group of adults between 18 and 50, and then 50 to whatever age. I had a 97-year-old client the other day, my oldest client ever. During the first meeting, she says to me, I don't know if we're quite ready to proceed. Got a call a week later saying, I am now ready to proceed. So that's where we're looking at there. So 90% of American adults do not have an estate plan. One of the reasons people do not create an estate plan, the main reason I mentioned before, people simply don't know what an estate plan can do. So again, I encourage you, I'm going to obviously talk a lot about estate planning here tonight, but if there are any questions, if there's any things that you have unanswered, just call me. My contact information is with the Client First. As Justin mentioned, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm not going to charge you for that, okay? I want to make sure that the folks in this room get a better understanding of estate planning than what they walked into with tonight. But the other reason is people think that the cost of estate planning can be significant. Again, I can't speak for other law firms, I can't speak for other attorneys do it, but I can certainly tell you in my practice that the cost of passing away without an estate plan is significantly more than the cost of creating one, okay? And again, that's something you need to learn more about. Talk to an estate planning attorney if you choose, and you find out what's right for you. But again, as I mentioned before, we're talking about legal components of an estate plan. Wills versus trusts, powers of attorney. Because what I can tell you is this, if you only have a will and you don't have a trust, the majority of the people in this room are not going to have an adequate estate plan if they only have a will and they don't have a trust. We can learn more about that. We can talk more about that. What I'm focused on tonight are the non-legal aspects of planning. And to be clear, there is a very distinct difference between non-legal and illegal. Okay? I am not talking illegal. Be very clear. As a lawyer, I don't do that. Non-legal. Services that someone other than an attorney can account for. So I'm going to call these the friends of estate planning. The areas of planning that are not directly related to an estate plan, things that you wouldn't necessarily talk to an attorney about. I'm just going to kind of go through these very briefly before I turn it over to Iva for point number 4 there. So let's talk about life insurance. Okay, just a quick primer on life insurance. Broadly speaking, when it comes to life insurance, there's 2 types of life insurance. There's term and there's whole life. Okay? Term policies are for a term of years, and they expire at the end of that term. So I'm 42 years old. If I take out a term life insurance policy that's a 30-year term, that'll cover me to 72. We're going to fast forward to whatever that date is, the day I turn 72. There's only one of 2 possibilities. I'm either alive or I'm not, okay? If I'm alive, then the policy just goes away. I don't get anything. It's insurance against that event. On the other hand, if I pass away prior to my 72nd birthday, under my example, then the policy pays out to the beneficiaries, okay? It's a term policy. Whole life policy, on the other hand, pays out a death benefit regardless of when that person passes away. So as you can imagine, a whole life policy, all things being equal, is going to be more expensive than a term life policy. So if you have a life insurance policy, it's important to know which of these 2 groups you fall into. But I really want to talk about the final point that we have here. Because again, I never ask for a show of hands. Iva likes asking for a show of hands. I don't, okay? The reason why is because I have some clients in this room, and I don't want to get into information about who might be a client, who might not be a client. So I don't ask anybody to raise hands. But here's what I'm going to say. I'd be willing to bet, just based on the numbers we have in this room, that there's at least one person in this room who believes what I'm going to say next. I have life insurance for the purpose of paying for my final expenses. That is why I maintain life insurance. I want that sum of money to be available to my loved ones to pay for my burial, to pay for my funeral, to pay for those final expenses. Here's the problem with that statement. That money is not guaranteed to go for those purposes. Because if you need Title 19 or Medicaid or managed care benefits, they are going to require you to liquidate that policy. Okay? How do we protect against that? We convert that life insurance policy into a funeral trust. A funeral trust is a sum of money that is set aside for those final expenses. Under Wisconsin law, you're allowed to fund it up to $15,000 per person. So again, if that's something you'd like more information about, I can point you in the right direction to people who can convert those life insurance policies for that reason. Because again, if that is your intention to have it be for that purpose, you may not get there. Okay? Banking considerations. Okay? Again, I don't need a show of hands, but I'd be willing to bet that most people in this room who have not worked with an estate planning attorney do not presently have beneficiaries on their bank accounts. Okay? What do I mean by that? Take a garden variety checking account. Okay? If I ask for a show of hands, I guarantee you almost every single hand, if not every single hand, would go up if I asked the question, how many of you have a checking account? Everybody has a checking account. Okay? But if I ask the next question of, how many of you have named beneficiaries on that account? I would imagine a lot of hands would go down because banks are lousy at asking that question. They don't like asking that question because it doesn't benefit them in any way. What I will tell you is this. If we do not have beneficiary designations on accounts, they become probate assets. And the goal of any well-drafted estate plan is to avoid probate. Why do we want to avoid probate? 3 reasons. 1, it's expensive. Average cost of probate is about 5 to 10 grand. Second, it's time consuming. Average length of probate is 12 to 18 months. Third, it's all public record. The only way that we can guarantee we avoid probate under Wisconsin law, as I mentioned earlier, is to create a trust as opposed to a will. If you only have a will-based plan, you don't have a trust-based plan, you do not have a guarantee that you're going to avoid probate. Again, I'm throwing a lot of information at you here that's not on the slide. I just want to give you a little bit of a flavor of that because if that's something that's new to you or something you're interested in avoiding, you should come talk to me afterwards. We can talk about ways to avoid that, okay? What I want to talk about here is the banks, though, okay? Having those beneficiary designations is so important because it allows the banks to know that you're going to create, or that you have created a trust, or that you're designating those beneficiaries. I want to focus on that last point, that beneficiary designations are always going to supersede the estate plan. When it comes to estate planning, I call it the set and forget it model. A lot of people come in with the belief of, okay, I hear you, Rob. It's important to create an estate plan. I'm going to create it and I'm going to set it on a shelf and never look at it again. That is misguided. Estate plans need to change based upon circumstances of life. I call it the 3 Ds and a B. Death, divorce, disability, birth. Those are 4 life events that oftentimes will cause people to want to update their estate planning documents. And we need to have that ability to do so when those life events do occur. My point is, if you list beneficiary designations that are at odds with what you have in your trust, or worse yet, you think that the creation of a will or a trust negates the need to have beneficiary designations, you're going to be in for disappointment, because that is always what is going to supersede whatever is in a will or a trust. My third and final point on Friends of Estate Planning before I turn it over to Iva is long-term care insurance. Okay? Nursing homes are expensive. I don't think I'm telling anybody anything new here. Average cost of a skilled nursing facility in this area, and Iva can certainly corroborate these numbers in my experience, is somewhere between $11,000 to $14,000 a month. Okay? So what will happen is a lot of people will take out long-term care insurance to try to offset that cost. Okay? Some of you in this room may already have long-term care insurance. I just want to discuss some of the key things to look at when it comes to long-term care insurance to make sure that we understand what we have. So if any of you have a long-term care insurance policy and you have questions about it, bring it to client first, have them make a copy of it for me. In about 90 seconds, I can review that document and answer these 4 questions here about what the policy really entails. Okay? The first point, and probably the least intuitive of the 4 points I'm going to make here, is the elimination period. Okay? I'm going to try to explain this as simply as possible through a different type of insurance, automobile insurance. Okay? Wisconsin law requires you to maintain automobile insurance as a condition for legally having a driver's license in this state. Okay? Every auto insurance policy has a deductible. Okay? The deductible in the sense of auto insurance is pretty straightforward. I have a $1,000 deductible on my auto insurance policy. If I get in a car accident, I'm responsible for the first $1,000. Insurance company is responsible for the rest. As you can imagine, the higher the deductible I choose, the more responsibility I choose to take on my own, the lower the premium can be. So there's a relationship there. When it comes to long-term care insurance, it's not a dollar figure, it's a period of days known as an elimination period, okay? Now the words elimination period may not appear in your long-term care policy, but that's the point. It's how many days you have to pay for before the long-term insurance or long-term care insurance policy kicks in. So the higher the amount of days, the more financial responsibility you have to undertake before the insurance kicks in, okay? Inflation protection. Most long-term care policies will say we will pay out at $200 a day. Well, $200 a day times 30 days is $6,000. Right? If you're at $14,000, you still have a delta of $8,000. How is that going to be accounted for? The answer is you're paying that difference, or your loved ones are paying that difference. However, many long-term care policies have inflation protection built in, where they say that that $200 gets raised 5% per year from the date you took out the contract. Well, that might get you to the $400 you need to get and have it cover $12,000. Length of the payment. A lot of these policies will only pay for a certain amount of years. So if you have a long-term care event that takes multiple years, you enter into a nursing home with Alzheimer's or dementia at 65 and your body is sound but your mind is not, you may end up being in a nursing home for 15, 20 years at that point. Long-term care policy is only going to pay for a portion of that. And again, this is all based on the contract that you signed, or in the case of people who don't have long-term care insurance, the terms of the documents that you will sign. Final point I want to talk about long-term care insurance is what I call the use it or lose it mentality. The traditional long-term care insurance policy took that form. You have somebody who's relatively healthy now, they're going to live out their life. They either will or will not ever need to enter into a nursing home. Of course, we don't know until we pass away whether we do or did not need nursing home care. The traditional model was if you didn't need the long-term care, you lost it. It was just gone, okay? The market has responded saying we don't like that. So now a lot of these companies will offer what are called hybrid products. They're long-term care policies that convert into a life insurance policy if you do not have that long-term event. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, those policies, all things being equal, are more expensive than the traditional use it or lose it because you're getting a guaranteed benefit. So again, if you have a long-term care insurance policy, you have questions about that, contact me, contact client first, and I can answer them for you very quickly, and maybe most importantly, at no charge. So senior living solutions. Okay, this is where I'm about to turn it over to my guest Iva here. Okay, I'm just going to talk a couple general points here. As an attorney, what I've learned, and again, first generation lawyer here. Okay, what I've learned in my practice is there's 3 words that my clients hate more than any other words I can utter, and those words are I don't know. Okay, but it is an honest answer. And when I don't know, I owe my clients the duty of candor to say I don't know what I don't know. Okay, and I would often get asked these questions about particular facilities. My mom, my dad, my sibling, my spouse is going to need more care. What do I do? Where do I turn? And oftentimes I have to say, I don't know. Well, now I know. I turn them over to Iva. Okay, so Iva is now going to give a little information about her company and the services she offers. And again, just to make this point clear, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to present 2 of these lunch and learns a year for Client First. I truly am. And I really enjoy talking about what I talk about. I truly enjoy doing what I do for a living. But I feel as though the topic that I'm presenting here on today with Iva is so important and so novel that I'm willing to cede my time for that purpose. Because again, if you want to know more about estate planning, if you have questions about your existing plan, contact me. But I'm going to give the rest of my time to Iva to make sure that you can understand the services that she offers and how she very well may be able to be of assistance, maybe not only to you, but to loved ones as well. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Iva.
Can you hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, thank you, Rob, and also I want to say thank you to Client First for allowing me this opportunity to come in and share some of the knowledge that I've gained over the past 7 years in the career that I've chosen. And I actually want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Georgia. I have moved to Wisconsin because I found a guy in West Bend that, boy, he just swept me off my feet. And I've lived here for 24 years. I've lost a little bit of my accent, picked up you guys, but I'll say y'all every once in a while. So bear with me and, know it comes from a good place. And I love, what I tell people is I love living here in West Bend. It's my husband's hometown. And all my friends back home, I say, it's like being down south. And being with people, all the warm, wonderful people that are down south. I said, but they just have funny accents up here. So, it works for me. Hopefully you guys will have fun with it as well. But I so appreciate Client First giving me this opportunity, because what I have found in my own experience, I 7 years ago got a phone call from a caregiver that was taking care of my mother and my brother, and my mom had an accident and rolled her car 8 times. And she and my brother lived to still be with us. And I was living here. And one of the scariest things when you're 1,000 miles away from your loved one is, oh my gosh, something's got to change, something's got to give. And so I jumped in, not knowing anything about what I'm doing now, and learned from going through just about anything and everything with my mother and my brother, and helping them and guiding them through this process. Made lots of mistakes, learned from those mistakes, and then found that at 50, at that time, it was like, I've been trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And gosh, my faith kind of became a big part of my decision, and I felt like I was being led to help others. And I really found out that my true passion in life is to help others. So I really jumped in, and I became what's called a certified senior advisor and a certified dementia practitioner. And I ended up, it's kind of like becoming, say, a CPA. I had to take a test, go through courses. I do continuing education. I have ethics programs I have to take, so that I'm serving what's best for seniors and helping guide them through the transition in life. Because believe me, maybe some of you have gone through this with your own loved ones, maybe your mother, your father, and you may have a slight taste of what it's going to be like, but it is a very challenging transition, and I want to be there to help. One thing just to let all of you know, my services are free to you. The way that I am compensated down the road is the communities that, say, you would want to move into, they pay me a finder's fee. And it's nothing that affects you and what you pay. I negotiate for my clients, so you get the best possible pricing at the best possible places. I've saved my clients anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000 in the whole process. And I like to make that something where it's like, it's not just about the money, but I want to make sure you know where I'm helping you, locate your mom or your dad or yourself, perhaps. And I want you to know that that place has been thoroughly investigated. I look at violations, citations. I look at turnover. I go and interview, review, tour, make sure the places that I might put together for you are going to be places that fit your needs. So a little bit of background about myself, and hopefully that helps you guys kind of see where I'm coming from. Okay, that's me. Okay, that's not me. Maybe it'll be me. I don't know. Yeah, you can try. I got May 24th, 2023. I've given this presentation several times, and one of the reasons why I like this is I can cater it to different audiences. Sometimes I am in an audience of, say, 30 to 50, and I like to let them know, hey, here's what you need to kind of think about for mom and dad. But as well, the message fits really, really well for people of all ages. So it's something to really think about. What I want to be able to do, and this says how to help assess your parents' needs, but it also applies to perhaps you here in the audience, you're married or maybe you're not married, and I want you to be able to think about the next phase of life and where you're headed. Do you want to stay in your home? Do you want to move? How many of you have thought about your plan is, I'm going to live and stay in my home until the day I die? How many people feel that way? They want to stay in their home? That's a big number. Yeah, and that's okay. I am a proponent of that. I'm a huge proponent of, if you can stay in your home, that's what I want for you more than anything. But what I want you to be able to do is think about, perhaps if you're not in your home and something happens, God willing it doesn't happen, but let's say you fall, and a doctor says to you while you're in the hospital, you can't go back to your home. How many of you have a plan for that? Okay. That's why I feel like I'm here, is to help you think about that next step, to where you can think about contingency plans of, if my plan A doesn't work, here's B, C, D, E-F. I'm getting my alphabet. I didn't have an alcoholic drink yet, so afterwards. Anyway, what I want you to be thinking about is if it's your spouse or if it could be your parent, that you're in a situation, look at their physical and mental well-being. If you were to ask my husband, I should be checked into a memory care facility. There's days I feel like I should just go right on in. It's been interesting lately. But with this, I want you to be thinking about yourself and your loved ones and look at what might be happening with them physically. I just had a knee replacement on January 3rd. I'm 6 weeks out. Ooh. I had a cane earlier today that was there for balance, but I was like, it's pretty even here. I don't have to really worry. So I'm hopefully not going to just go down in the presentation and eat my words. But what I want you to be thinking about is, do you have someone that you love that's falling a lot? Do you have something that's happening with them where they're becoming extremely forgetful? My husband does you just told me that yesterday. I don't remember. Different things that are happening where it's becoming more and more apparent to you what the behaviors are. Look at, they call this the activities of daily living and any difficulties they might be having. Are you noticing that perhaps your husband is not wanting to take a shower all that often and you can't seem to talk him into it? Maybe that's an issue. Or if it's your mother or your father, someone that is not necessarily taking good care of themselves. Perhaps they're not eating. All of a sudden you're like, they're melting away. What's going on? They're not eating, or they don't have a need to eat. There's various activities. So we call this the activities of daily living where can they dress themselves? Can they go to the bathroom on their own? Can they perhaps get up from a chair on their own and walk on their own? What's going on with activities of daily living? Can they shower on their own? What's happening? Keep an eye on those things because that's a sign of you might need to start looking at options and setting things up. Assess the medical conditions and healthcare requirements. If you're noticing they're forgetting to take their medications, it's something that they don't see a need to do. Start paying attention to the aspects of perhaps they might be a diabetic. Perhaps it's something that you're noticing some changes. So look out for that loved one. Look out for each other. I know sometimes it's hard when we're married with our spouses. Sometimes we don't want to, but it's keeping those things about their health care and their medical needs, just keeping abreast of what's going on because you don't want to get in that situation of there might be a problem. It might be an issue that happens that you end up in the hospital and you have problems that you're not allowed to go back home. It's that prevention, staying ahead of what might be going on. Look at also the social and also their emotional needs. How many of you know anyone out there who is living in their home all by themselves? They don't go out. They're not socializing. They stay in their home. How many of you know that? Or perhaps you might be the one staying at home. You're here today, so I don't think you can classify. But you may know somebody. You may have a mother. No. Like my mom is here now. I just 6 months ago moved my mother and my brother up here, and I'm thrilled about it. I'll show more about that. But I'm noticing my mom does not like the snow. And the fact that there is snow on the ground, she will not want to go anywhere. Refuse. And so I told her it's melted pretty much now. You can come out. Pretty funny. But think about those aspects of what's happening to someone from an emotional and from a social standpoint. And keep an eye on it. It's an indicator for you. And then as well, this is the thing that happens, and this happened to my dear mother-in-law and father-in-law. My father-in-law 10 years ago got diagnosed with dementia, and he had dementia for 10 years. It's a very slow, progressive disease for him. And my dear mother-in-law, the sweetest lady you'd ever meet, I just adored her so much. About 2.5 years ago, we got a phone call. We would go by and visit them. They stayed in their home. It's the middle of COVID, and they were very isolated. And she insisted that she was going to take care of him and that she was not going to have any caregivers come in the house, and they were not going to go to an assisted living place, even though they had a long-term care policy, because she was going to be the one to do it. They weren't going to move. And it was very, very hard on her. she didn't tell anybody what was going on and what her needs were. Okay, she was the one that was working herself 24/7, waking up, dealing with, 2 o'clock in the morning, wide awake, roaming around the house. And sadly, she had a massive stroke and passed away. And it's one of the hardest things, and I get emotional about it because she was just the most wonderful lady and loved and cared for everyone. But she put her needs and her abilities of what she could do to the side because she was taking care of her husband. She felt like those were her vows. But at the same time, she should have reached a hand out or allowed some help in. And I like for people to know that because, boy, my father-in-law, he just passed away this past March. And it's just the hardest thing because I look at it and I go, for 2 years, he hung on. And he did very well. I was able to help place him in a great place. And family was able to visit and be a part of his life. But I just wish it could have been she was still around. But that's how things go in this world. And so I want to be able to help you get a plan together for yourself, your loved one, and anyone else in your life that you can influence so that they aren't in those types of situations. I talk about this from a spousal standpoint, but also from your kids' standpoint. How many of you call your kids if you need them to run to the store for you? Anybody got that? Not quite yet. Okay. The crucial thing that happens is you get you get told by the doctor or whoever it is that says you are no longer going to be able to drive. What a horrible thing. I've been walking around, I have my cane, and I'm feeling like that's going to be next. They're going to take my license. And it felt like it for 6 weeks when I had to say to my son, can you take me here? And say to my husband, can you take me there? That's hard. It's really, really hard to ask somebody to take you somewhere. But that's something that when you're in that position, sometimes what happens is you lean on your kids. And then your kids, to me, are the sandwich generation because they then potentially have their own kids. So there's that struggle for them to help you and to help themselves and to help their kids. They're just really pulled and tugged. And sometimes it's hard to think about that. So you want to look at yourself, if you are the caregiver, wanting to make sure your availability and your time and things are not taken advantage of. You want to look at as well your physical and emotional capabilities. Can you handle this? I've had some clients call up and go, I cannot handle this because I'm a female and I got my dad and I don't want to go and help him in the bathroom. Things that you don't think about. Some people can handle that no problem. I know I can, even with my own mother. I'm like, no, that's not me. So it's nice to have some help with various things. So emotionally being able to be there and work with your mom or your dad. I look at as well if someone ends up with dementia and managing the conversations that you have with them over and over and over sometimes. And having a full day of that same conversation 15, 20 times. Do that day in and day out. How do you manage that where you don't have someone that you can have that relationship with like you used to? Just things to think about, okay? And then consider your support system and available help. My mom, she went graciously into assisted living. Thank goodness. She didn't fight me, and she didn't dig her heels in, and she took to it very, very well. Because she was thinking about, okay, you live in Wisconsin, I live in Georgia. How the heck are we going to do this? She thought about, I had my own life and I had my own kids, and she said, let's give it a whirl. And she took to it very well. And I have a brother who's got some developmental disabilities, and we had him going into a community as well. And he was a bit more of a challenge. But that's a whole other story I'll share in a little bit. But I want you to think about, as you age or as your spouse maybe, or as, say, a sister or a brother or a mother is aging, think about your own emotional support and what your needs are. And when you look at what is the best decision for my loved one going forward, how is that going to impact you? And as well, I say include your parents. Let's say it's you and your spouse. What I want you to be thinking about is if you have wishes and thoughts of what you want to have happen, meet with your family. Talk to them about it. One of the things that surprised me with my mom, she had done all of her legal paperwork I had no idea my mom had an estate plan. I didn't know any of it. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, you were pretty smart. You got all this stuff done. Because I had looked at it and went, oh my gosh, we're going to have to go through all of this. And she had everything set up. But I had no idea. Talk to your kids. Talk to each other. Talk about what you want. Because if you end up being that person that is in the hospital, let's say you broke your hip and the doctor says, you're not going home. It may not happen, but sometimes it does. How are your wishes going to be honored? If you end up with dementia, if a doctor diagnoses you and you're early enough in the stages of dementia, you can still talk about what you want. You know, if you say, I don't want to stay in my home, then you want to be able to get a plan together. I like helping my clients. This is one of the things I love doing, is having meetings with them, sometimes with families, and we talk about, okay, if your plan is to stay home, that's great. Let's get these contingency plans put together. What if you do break a hip? Let's talk about what's going to happen to you and what's going to happen to, say, if it's mom, dad. Where's dad going to be? Is he going to go with you? Are you going to live apart? That's a scary thing for a lot of the couples that I work with. You know, and then they got this big house that they're living in, and you go from a house of however many thousand square feet to, say, an apartment that's 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 1 room. It's something to really think about. How many of you have lots of things that you treasure and love in your home? Okay. The biggest and hardest thing to overcome in making a decision of what you're going to do is that daunting task of, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Okay. We all have our things, and they're important, but figuring out, what do you take with you and what do you have to let go of? And that letting go is extremely difficult for people to do. And sometimes that can be so intimidating that the thought of moving somewhere, a lot of people stop. And then they wait for something to happen. And that's one of the things I'd say, please don't wait for something to happen to get a plan together. Make sure your wishes are known to your family, so that if you're not able to say what you want, you've got a plan that they can hand, you can hand to them, and they will be able to do what you want. I would be able to help you in putting those plans on paper and documenting them and making sure your wishes are honored. I want to be able to help you in finding the best place for you. If faith is a big part of what you're doing, I will work with you, and we'll go and we'll visit. I will hold your hand through the whole process. I'm not going to just say, okay, call this place, call that place. Make sure everything along your process is handled and you feel comfortable and confident that if you do take that tumble, you are going to be taken care of in the way that you want. Because one of the most frustrating things for me is when a family calls and they're in the hospital and they say, the doctor told us we can't go home and we've got to be out of here in 2 days. Because guess what? That's what they give you. 2 days. Rehab, hospitals, they give you literally 2 days to find a place. And I have been able to really help a lot of folks in extending that sometimes and working through and negotiating with the hospital or rehab to make sure we get the right things pulled together. And those calls, I don't mind them, but I prefer having clients that have a plan. And there's something in place that says, okay, they're going to go to XYZ place in whatever city. That's where they want to be. And they've been on, say, a waiting list, or this is a place that will take them in this situation. But you want to listen to those fears that they have. I talk about the house and things that are happening. And, if they've been in their home and they're by themselves. My mom, I really thought my mom didn't really have any friends because they were living so out and away from everyone. And I'm like, she's never going to take to any of this social stuff, arts and crafts and videos, watching videos and having fun and exercise. I'm like, my mom's going to sit in her room, because that's what I thought. My mom is the social butterfly of the century, and she has taken to everything in her assisted living community like butter. I honestly did not think when she was 80 years old she was going to make it 2 years with her health conditions. My mom is very happily 87 years old and doing fantastic. She is in better health than she ever was, and it just makes me feel good because I've helped her have that extended life that I don't know if she would still be with us if she had been staying at home and trying to take care of my brother. So if that's a good witness, I hope that helps you guys kind of see there can be a positive, because most people are like, I'm not going there, I'm not doing that. My mom has been loving life, and it's, for me, so comforting to see her happy. And then what you want to do as well, okay, so encouraging their input and involvement in the planning. One of the things I like to do is sit with families. I might meet, say, with you and your spouse one-on-one, and we talk about it. And if you've got some kids that they've got their idea of what they want you to do, and they're dead set, you're going to come live with me, we'll talk through it. We'll have a family meeting. We can do it if someone's living far away. I love doing those types of things and kind of being a mediator with that. So it's something to really think about, and making sure what your wishes are honored, and that your kids understand the logic of how you got there. It really does make a difference. And then the biggest part of all of it is providing that emotional support, giving them that confidence that you are definitely in control. Because one of the things when you get in these situations is you feel completely out of control. That's one of the hardest things, is to see someone who feels like they have no control over what their future is going to be. And how many of you love to be able to plan and have your future? You know what you're going to do, and no one's going to tell you what to do. No one's going to be willing to raise their hand. But most of us like to be able to be in control of our future. And by doing a plan of what you're thinking will make a huge difference in what your future is going to hold.
Question.
Yes.
Over here.
Oh, yes.
There really has to be a balance between there. Because your first thing says encourage their input.
Yes.
But if they come up with some out-of-this-world plan, you have to say, no, I don't think so.
And that's where I'm able to be that mediator in the middle, to listen and weigh it out. But at the end of the day, you still get to be the one that says, this is what I want. And what I do is work to find a way to compromise and get there. Does that answer the question?
You say you get to decide. Is that the child or the adult?
If you're the one that's looking to move into assisted living, you get to be the one to make that decision.
What if that person says, no, I want to stay home, but the doctor had said, no, 2 days and you can't go home?
Then we'll look. Good questions. Love this. What we do is, if I can come in, or you want to be able to deal with it, it's being able to talk logically through it, say with the doctor, with the son or the daughter, and being able to say, okay, here's what I want. I'm not going to be able to move back home unless, say, I have in-home care, because that's a solution. Does the in-home care fit your needs? What is the cost of that in comparison to moving to assisted living? How many hours a week or a day do I need to have versus moving, say, to assisted living? There's always ways to really address what your needs are and what your wants are. So your first plan may be, I'm going to move home, and I've got in-home care providers that are going to come to my home, and they're going to assist me X number of hours a day. The doctor's saying that should be sufficient. Say my wife is going to help me. Otherwise, we've got this. That's a good plan. But if it's not enough hours, like, I'll give you an example. If you wanted to have in-home care 24/7, anybody want to guess how much that costs?
25 to 30.
At $30 an hour?
25 to 30,000.
You got it. So you can move to assisted living, and how many of you can guess in this area, assisted living, and that's a category of, you can still function and do some things, but you need some help with some aspects of daily living. What do you think that cost is? You guys are really smart. You beat the other folks really well. You hit it right on this, $5,000 to $7,000 a month, based on your need. So it's a looking at the cost, looking at the need, and addressing the worries and concerns of that son or that daughter. And they may or may not like what you want. But at the end of the day, this is your decision as the person. If it was you, it is your decision. Now, if they have progressed far enough along, if they have dementia, and you have had to become the activated power of attorney for that person, okay, that is a very different and challenging situation. That's why I became a certified dementia provider, because those can be extremely challenging. I have one client who has been in assisted living for about a year. The first 2 months, she packed her bags and was going home. And they knew how to work with her, and okay, they'll be here tomorrow. And it was that same Groundhog Day every day for 2 months. And then eventually, she started realizing this is home. But every once in a while, she's packing her bag. She's heading for the door. Those are the hard ones. Those are the ones that, for me, I'm a little different from, say, the folks, competitors that are out there, like A Place for Mom. I visit my clients. I go every holiday. I'm this crazy person who dresses up every holiday, and I go visit my clients, bring them a little gift, and spend time with them. And there's a reason behind that. I check and see how they are doing. I take a picture, so family, I send it to family, so they see, hey, here they are, they're doing great. If there's things that aren't going well, I advocate for my clients, because you know what? No place is perfect. It's never going to be perfect. So that information, they might share with me of something that's concerning. I work with the community, and I'll say, hey, this is what's going on with client XYZ. I don't like having this happen. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's talk about what's going on. If the family has concerns about things that are going on, I do the same thing and try to be that moderator for figuring out what's the solution. And sometimes it may be packing up and moving to another place. I typically, that is probably 4% of my clientele that don't like where they've been moved, and we go, okay, let's figure out another option for you. Did I answer your question? I probably went way around it, but Oh, all right, good question though. Thank you for that. It is very difficult when you've got your kids who have their plan for you, and they're very adamant about what you're going to do, how you manage that. And it is good to have someone else in advocating for what you want and being able to help explain it. And sometimes it's difficult. It can be very, very challenging. Sometimes our kids can really think they know what's best. But if they see you've got a plan, and for each option of, okay, if I get dementia, this is what I want to have happen. If I fall, and there are too many different aspects, and I like to be able to think it through and have you think about things you hadn't thought about yet. All right. Keeping communications simple and accessible. What do I mean by that? I've talked about it. Keep things clear and concise when discussing your options. If you've met with me and we've pulled together what your plans are, okay, and you meet with your kids, we're going to keep things simple. Or if it's the kids and they're, oh, my mom, she needs to go into assisted living. She can't live on her own. I listen to what their needs are, but guess what? I meet with mom. And I talk to mom about what mom wants. Sometimes everybody's going they're rowing the boat in the same direction, and sometimes that boat just spins and spins. So it's really making sure, based on your situation, that we're all going in the same direction, and I'll do everything I can to have everybody rowing in the same direction. Sometimes I can put all the work in, we'll come down to the point of we're moving in, and guess what? Mom or dad might dig their heels in because they're just scared. It's a fear. I back off. I say, give them time. Give them what they need and help them get there. I don't like those because something's going to happen that then they won't have a choice. So it's a tough place to be when people are very adamant about they want things to go a different way. So hopefully that makes sense. And then provide written materials, visual aids. So if let's say you want to talk with your mom or your dad, or if you want to talk to your kids, I want to be able to help you have something that's a document for someone to study and be able to go, let me punch holes in that. I welcome it. Because guess what? They may think about something that maybe we hadn't thought about. Having those plans put together gives you that opportunity to have something documented to keep you going forward, making sure it's clear to your kids and your loved ones what your wishes are. Does that make sense? All right. Other things you want to think about, technology with your kids. I know myself, I'm okay with technology. If anyone else in here, your kids go, oh, email me this, doctor. Let's see what we can do to keep everybody communicating on the same level. It can be very challenging when you're like, oh, put this document here. I'll see what I can do to help out with those types of things. And then the other thing, this is a funny one. My mom, I thank the good Lord, my mom just got her hearing aids. I have been yelling and yelling and repeating. She finally got her hearing aids, and I'm like, oh, I just love that I don't have to do that. So if you're dealing with your parents or your spouse, and your spouse they don't hear you, you're sitting right next to them and they don't hear you. Think about those aspects of challenges that you might be facing. And it does make a difference. If mom or dad's digging their heels in, they may not be able to really understand what's going on because they can't hear you or they can't see what you're putting in front of them. So there's things that you want to think about is with your mom or your dad or with your spouse. And the other big one, and my husband says this is a big issue for me, being patient, attentive, and supporting during our conversations. I'm very, very patient with anyone else, and with him, oh boy, different story. But that's my spouse, okay? So you guys know what I'm talking about with that. Sometimes you gotta let them have their time to be able to do what they need and be patient. Okay. Here's what I do for my clients. And yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask you, I think you skipped one of the slides.
Oh, did I?
Is that on purpose, or?
Oh, I don't know. Let me go back. Let's see.
I asked a question and it took her out of her.
Oh, you took me on one of my tangents. Was it this one? Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, your financial situation. This is something that you are really going to be, yes. Oh, thank you. Okay. This is something you're going to talk about with your financial planner or your attorney. There's aspects of this that I could go into deep detail. But you want to be able to assess not only your own income, savings, and assets. One of the things I shared with the last group that's very important to know is in the state of Wisconsin, you need to have 2 years worth of private pay in order to be able to, at some point, go on to Medicaid. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's say you've saved up $100,000, okay, that you think I'm going to be good, I've got the money that I need, and you want to move into assisted living. $5,000 to $7,000 a month. How long is that $100,000 going to last? Not very long. Okay. What do? You want to make sure you're in a community that based on their license that they will accept folks that will transition to Medicaid. Okay. It's very important because there are places that are private pay only and some that are ones that will accept. With that, what happens is if you've got 2 years worth of private pay in the state of Wisconsin, they'll accept you there. You may end up having to bring in a roommate, just depends on the scenarios, but you want to make sure you can private pay for your assisted living if you have it, or your nursing home for as long as you can. Being that if you go on to Medicaid, things do start changing. They may not be able to continue to have you in that particular place for various reasons. You may have to pack up and move somewhere that's not your choice. Some things to think about. You have your insurance coverage, meaning long-term care policies, life insurance. Rob touched on that greatly, and then as well I talked about Medicaid. You're very lucky to be in this state. It's the number 2 state in the country as far as senior services and benefits. My mom was in Georgia, and guess what? When you run out of money, you go to a homeless shelter. Guess why I moved her to Wisconsin. Okay, I work all over the country, and that's something to think about. You're in a great place, number 2. So don't think Wisconsin's bad. It's great. Create a budget and a plan for your future expenses. So use those numbers that I gave you for looking at, okay, do I have enough to get me through 2 years? But be aware, you're going to want to have the ability to pay for those things more long term if you can privately. Yes?
If you wouldn't have enough money to pay for those 2 years, but if you got a roommate, you could skate through the 2 years. Then after that, when you go on Medicaid, would you get the private room again?
It all depends on the facility that you move in. She's talking about if she had a roommate starting off, and different places, there's different fees and things that go into a roommate. It's all handled very, very differently. And I can talk to you a little bit about that, afterwards. Yeah, there's so many things that go into it that I would love to be. I could talk all night about this. Things that we all didn't know about what's out there for us and what our future holds. The financial side of it, you are all the client first. You're in a great hands. It's smart to have that, but to be planning for it, so that yes, that 2-year minimum is there. So if you do the math, if you're at assisted living cost, Memory care costs are even more. And he mentioned nursing home costs are even more. So plan accordingly with what you've got in your, and if you have no way to really increase because of the limit of your income, let's talk. There's ways to work with it. I got a brother that I got on Medicaid, and there's ways to make it work, but there's not a lot of choices, and you don't really get a say. But if you go into that place before your 2 years, and then they will accept you on Medicaid, you have a say. Like I talked about, you have some control in where you go. And it's better to pick that earlier on in the process than waiting until something happens, and what if you don't have enough money? So sometimes I tell people, look at that whole option of what's my timing? Do I wait until I'm really bad and I'm needing skilled nursing level care? With that, you're looking at a high expense. Do I have enough to hold me through, or is it better for me to move into an assisted living when I just need a little bit of help? And my costs are going to be lower, and I can pay that 2 years much quicker, and then I'm going to be guaranteed a spot. So there's factors to really think about, and I help people really look at their picture, because everybody's unique in their picture here. At the end of the day, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I want you to do what's best for you and for your loved ones, because sometimes you have to be that person making those decisions. Think about, do you have the time to research and go out and tour places and understand, have they had violations? Have they had citations? Are they, really a place that has good people working there? That's something, if you can do that on your own, go for it. Absolutely. There's resources out there like me that most people don't know we're here. If I could afford to advertise like a place for mom, I would do that. But that's a big budget. I'm local here, but I work all over the country based on who my friends and family and connections have been. I've learned every state is different, and so if you've got a loved one living somewhere else and you can't quite help them, let me know. That's something that's a specialty because I've done it myself. And then let's see. Oh, as well, do you have personal connections? Do you have someone who's working in a place and you're really happy with what they're telling you? Great. If you want to look at options, I'm there to help you. Or there might be other resources as well. I'm not saying I'm the only one to do it. There are plenty of other people that are CSAs like I am, but I'm here locally as a service, and my services are free to you. So, any more at this point? I know I probably went over, huh? I didn't go over earlier. I went over today. All right, yes?
Just one question that you were talking about the 2-year minimum.
Yes.
Do you know the look back? What is the look
Thank
back
you.
now?
Thank you for bringing that up. I did talk about that in the earlier session. In the state of Wisconsin, there's a 5-year look back. Yes. And one of the things you'll want to definitely talk to Rob about when he talked about trusts and looking to protect your assets, that's something that he is there to help you figure out what is best for you, because we're all unique in where we are in our lives and what we have. And you want to get professional advice from an attorney like Rob who understands it. But that's a very good question. Thank you for saying that. Anyone else? Clarification? Yes?
You talked about personal experience and how you had to learn to deal with that. But I don't think so. What was your background?
Prior to this?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I basically, for me, I graduated from Georgia Southern University down in Georgia. I have a business degree and a marketing degree, and I have a master's degree in technology. And I've worked in a wide variety of areas. Worked for UPS for years in their corporate headquarters. And I had my son, and I've been up here, and I worked in a lot of nonprofits serving the needs of the underprivileged. Things like Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I worked at the university. I taught at UW-Washington County for 6 years. And actually, one of my students is here. She can tell you a little bit about how I did with that. Dominique, who works for Client First, is a former student. So I've had a lot of, I've had my education, but then found this was a niche. And for 7 years, I've been doing this because it comes from a place of it's a very soft spot in my heart. I'm very passionate about it. And I want to make sure what I learned the hard way I can help other people so they're not going through the same turmoil that I've gone through. And every day is a learning opportunity. And that's the thing that I want to be able to share my knowledge so that you're not making the same mistakes that I am. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, 5-year look back, what that means is whenever you are looking to go on to Medicaid, like you're at a point where you've spent and spent and spent all of your money and you're getting down to very few assets. What will happen is you say, I don't have enough money. And you don't want to wait until you don't have any money. You want to be able to give a fair enough warning so that what you'll do is the place that you move into, you would say to them, I am struggling to pay this. I maybe have 6 months left to pay with my assets that I have. They'll help you get transitioned onto Medicaid by bringing in the people at our lovely ADRC. They're wonderful people, the Aging Disability Resource Center. And what they'll do is help get all of the paperwork completed for you, but then you fill out knowing what all your assets are, what you have. There's certain things that they're able to, like Rob mentioned, be able to pull funds from, and you may not be completely depleted of your assets. They take you down. You can only have $2,000 or less in your checking account in order to be put on Medicaid. Now, what happens is you may not be there, but they weigh what your cost of care is going to be. And then they'll take, for instance, my brother's on Social Security and Disability. That's all he has. They take a very big chunk of that, and they use that, plus they pay whatever extra cost. Make sense? Good question.
Thank you so much, Rob and Iva.
I'll be in the back. I have some info and cards if anybody wants
Good.
to.
So
Yeah.
if you have any other questions? So if you can take about 30 to 45 seconds to complete the feedback form, just to let them know how they did. And then if there's any other concerns, questions you have for us. Me being a presenter, I appreciate when people give feedback on that, so I'm sure Rob and Iva will appreciate that. Next month, March, the Truistic team, which I'm a member of, will be presenting, and we are going to go through several case studies of kind of what to do and what not to do in financial planning. We're going to try to make it a little bit fun. If you've been to some of the recent ones, we've done a lot of sports things. We're going to try to do like a Dr. Phil type scenario, so we're trying to have some fun with that. So if you're able to make that in March, that'd be great. I'm sure we'll have great food as well. And then we're in tax season, so we've got our tax special for people 50 and over, so if you're not a client, definitely take advantage of that. And then if you're interested in financial planning with Client First, you can contact us to set up an initial no-fee consultation, and there's never a fee for those meetings. We don't do any planning at the meetings. It's just an opportunity for kind of us to gather information, see what type of planning you may need to do, and then go over the planning process and cost structure. So we're not a high-pressure firm. We do those meetings, let you know how we're set up, and if you decide to go forward, it's up to you. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you much for coming out.